We come today to the death of John the Baptist. I lead a Bible study every Wednesday morning at Doon Village with about 40 very bright senior citizens, and I put to them the question, am I right in calling the death of John the Baptist a tragedy? Was it an unmitigated tragedy with no redeeming features? Unlike, say, the death of Jesus, which, terrible though it was, had wonderful redeeming features. When they lifted him up on the cross, they were fulfilling a prophecy. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so will the Son of Man be lifted up and draw all men unto himself. He bore our sin in his body on the tree, and on the third day he rose from the dead. Wonderful redeeming features. But were there any redeeming features in the death of John the Baptist? Hold that question for a few moments. In Mark chapter 6 we read, Herod had had John put in prison because John had been saying, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him, but she was not able to because Herod protected John, knowing him to be a righteous man. John dared to criticize Herod publicly, saying it was not lawful for him to have his brother's wife. But what we're really dealing with here is that Herodias was Herod's half-sister. This is incest. And John dared to criticize it, and so he made for himself a dangerous, implacable enemy. Herodias nursed a grudge, and that's the worst thing you can do with a grudge. She was a woman scorned, and we all know the quotation, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Do you know where that quotation comes from, by the way? Some people think it comes from the Bible. It doesn't. Here's a picture maybe to put you off the scent. This is Elizabeth Taylor playing Kate in The Taming of the Shrew, but it doesn't come from there either. It doesn't come from Shakespeare at all. Actually, it comes from a very little-known author by the name of William Congreve, and an even less-known play called The Mourning Bride. But Herodias harbored a grudge. Grudges, hatred, bitterness, very dangerous things. Listen to this piece of life advice from a man called Eddie Yaku, who was a 99-year-old survivor of the Holocaust.
You must not hate. You say, I don't like this person, but you don't hate. Hate is a disease. It destroys first your enemy, but you also. It destroys you, but you.
Hatred will destroy you. But Herodias nursed her grudge, and all the ghastly sequence followed from that. Everything about the story is sad. We read that Herod knew that John was a righteous man and tried to protect him. But when the time came of facing embarrassment in front of his guests, he didn't have the courage to do the right and humble thing and say, "I'm sorry, everybody, I made a big mistake, I'm not going to do this thing." No, just to save himself embarrassment, he goes ahead and does this terrible deed. No wonder 2 years later when Jesus met him, he wouldn't dignify him with so much as a single word. And so I put to my Bible study group, is this an unmitigated tragedy with no redeeming features? And for about 5 minutes, we discussed back and forth. We looked at the sordid details of the story. The story would be at home on page 3 of a Sunday newspaper. It's got everything a tabloid could ask for. It's got incest. It's got drunken orgies. It's got politicians making rash promises. How they love that. It's got an underage dancing girl. And it's got a manipulative and dominating mother. And it's got its ghoulish ending. It's one of those stories where you say there has to be a final judgment day when the books are open and things are put right. Otherwise, there's no justice in the universe. I do hope that Elizabeth and Zachariah died before news of this event reached them, because it would have broken them. Think of the joy with which he was received, and then it ends like this. And so my group discussed back and forth for about 5 minutes, and we came to the conclusion that indeed it was a tragedy with no redeeming features. The only slight redeeming feature I could think of was at least his death was quick. And then at the back of the room, my wife put up her hand and said, "Is there not one redeeming feature?" And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "At least John was faithful unto death." And of course, she's right. And on that great judgment day, he's going to hear that voice saying, "Faithful unto death, I will give you a crown of life."